Everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Caitlin Carlson, and I'm an Associate Director of Donor Relations and Stewardship here at CSU. On behalf of Women in Philanthropy, I'm thrilled to welcome you to the opening session of Gather, Conversations to Inspire. For those of you who are new to this community, our mission is to connect and empower a broad community to elevate women in philanthropy at Colorado State University. We recognize the power of women and strive to connect them with their passions at CSU so that through philanthropy, the world's biggest challenges are solved. The purpose of Gather is to spotlight women in the CSU community through a series of conversations so that we can be inspired by their work, their expertise, and their accomplishments. In a year where so many of us have turned to social media to keep in touch with family, friends, and even colleagues, our opening session features alumni who are experts in this field. Now, before I introduce our special guests, I want to take a moment to address a few housekeeping items. This program is being recorded, so feel free to keep your camera on, or if you're more comfortable, feel free to turn it off as well. That's perfectly fine. And thanks for submitting your questions ahead of time. And we tried to incorporate as many of those as we could into the moderated panel. But we have planned for a few minutes at the end to address any questions that come up during the program. Feel free to type those into the chat and we'll get to those as we can. Now, without further ado, I'm honored to welcome the special guests who will serve on our panel. Jocelyn Goodroad. Jocelyn is a 2002 CSU graduate with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration with a CIS concentration. Jocelyn has worked in digital advertising sales for almost 2 decades, including several years at Microsoft, where she created and sold strategic advertising programs for a dedicated list of Fortune 500 clients. In order to solve the growing need for a solution to efficiently scale and manage the influencer marketing programs, Jocelyn and 2 of her former clients founded Find Your Influence, the industry's first all-in-one influencer marketing solution, and also a female-owned business, in 2013. Today, Jocelyn serves as the EVP of Strategic Partnerships, Business Development, and Sales for the Arizona-based organization. Kimberly Stern. With 15 years of experience in strategic digital communications, CSU alumna Kimberly Stern leads Colorado State University's award-winning social and digital media team. She loves the challenge of blending the art and science of creating dynamic and engaging digital content. Maya Siegel. Maya Siegel is an entrepreneur, student, and activist, leading purpose-driven work at the intersection of social media and social impact. At CSU, she is studying marketing and entrepreneurship. And finally, our featured presenter, Bre Patterson. Bre is the author of Denver Food Crawls, Touring the Neighborhood One Bite and Libation at a Time, and Bites with Bre, a blog sharing the food stories of Denver. A well-known influencer and blogger, in 2017, Bre founded Vesta Media, a social media and influencer marketing agency. Bre has had many speaking engagements and has appeared at Colorado State University, Denver Startup Week, and Channel 2 News, among others. In her spare time, she enjoys time in the outdoors with her sheepadoodle and her fiance. Take it away, Bre.
Thank you so much, Caitlin, for the lovely introduction. And let's begin. Leveraging social media in your career. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today. Let's get started. According to Career Builder survey, 70% of employers use social media to screen candidates during the hiring process. And about 43% of employers use social media to check on current employees. The first thing I recommend doing is Googling yourself. Literally, just get on there, look at what your name could pop up or what it brings up. Look at the photos, identify where they're hosted. We'll talk about what to do in the next slide. But if you need to clean house, think about it this way. If you were running to be the president, what could be used against you that's on social media? These are things that people will look at hiring managers or other people within the hiring realm, such as a CEO or the person you might direct report to. And then also think about it as, what would you include if you were to write a memoir about yourself? Here's an example of how I Google myself. So first off, I'll note that you want to be in incognito mode so that you have no influence on what's actually being shown. Type your name slow to see what comes up, and then add a location. And then you want to just scroll through. And one of the things I'm not going to do on this, but just to give you a heads up, you should go to page 2, if not even to page 3. You can see all of the different places that you've been seen. And then check those sources. Next, you'll want to check the photos. There's obviously photos of me on this page, but you'll see that there's also photos of other people named Bre Patterson, or people that come up when I Google that. So you can see over there, there's someone, and then let me just find someone to click on for you. But if you see something that you don't necessarily like, oh, here's one. This is not me, and I don't know who that is, but it's someone else that's named Bre Patterson. If it was a photo of me that I find incriminating or something that I don't want to be out there, the best thing to do would be to contact the web developer or the owner of that website and ask it to be removed. From there, you can usually negotiate something a little bit that's in your favor. So claiming your platforms. Once you've done your Google analysis of yourself, seen where you are, what's out there about you, and maybe there's nothing, that's even better. You're going to want to start putting things out there so that people have a way to find you. So claim your platforms. First thing you're going to want to do is to find a domain for your name. And that can be anything as your first and last name. So I own brepatterson.com. If that's, for example, if that was your name or you have a really common name, you can also do last.first, first.last, or even instead of doing .com, you could do .co, .net, .dev if you're a developer, .author if you're a writer. Different things are out there for those .com alternatives. And then if someone does own your name and they're not active, so if someone else owned brepatterson.com and I didn't have access to that, the simple thing to do is to reach out to them and say, hey, I saw that you haven't used this for a while. Can I buy this domain off of you? And most likely someone's going to say, sure, here's a price. So I would say expect to have a price attached to it. But if they're not willing to do it, go with a variation. It's not the end of the day if you can't have that full domain. And then what platform should you be on? So the first 3 on this, Facebook, Twitter, the first 2, I would say are very important, Facebook, Twitter, and then also being on Instagram, and most important would be LinkedIn, especially looking at a career platform. So let's dive in on Instagram and Facebook, because these are the 2 I find that most people are on socially and aren't necessarily looking at it in a career sense. So hello world, my name is. The first thing you want to do is have a captivating bio. You're going to want to use your name, a specialty, career interest, and then if you have hashtags that are relevant to what you're doing, you're going to want to use that, and always link to that e-portfolio or that website that you have that showcases more about you. And then let's look at just a couple of these. So these are 3 people that I pulled offline. So you can see for Coding Blonde, her name is Masha, and she says community for women in tech. And so if you look up anything women in tech, women tech, her name's going to pop up. And that's why it's important to have that information in your bio. Also for Kate, she says she's a realtor. She's located in Denver. So if someone's looking for Denver realtor, or they just want to see, they know, oh, Kate just applied to our overhead real estate company. Let's see what she has for her social media. And then I'm showcasing Jackie Carr because she is an entrepreneur, but also at the same time, she isn't just on Instagram, she's on Facebook too. And she crosses everything over from one platform to the other. But you can see in her highlight covers, all of their highlight covers, they're sharing what's their passion, they're sharing what they're knowledgeable about. So especially things like ways to help mental health. And then you can also give like a sneak peek or a behind the scenes of what you have going on in your life so that people get more of an idea of what your personality is like outside of just your career work. And then one thing to note, if your page is private, an employer cannot access that through any sleuthing tools. It's illegal. However, if someone that is friends with you was to share a post or share something that you said, that's not illegal. So when you're posting to any of your social platforms, that's something to keep in mind is who's following you. And I mean, the first rule is always to put positive information out there and not anything incriminating. But if it was incriminating, just realize that that could go against you if someone was to share that information with with the place you're employed, but they technically can't go look if it's private. So if you do have a private platform, my recommendation is to create a professional platform or a professional account in addition to your private account. So planning your posts. Let's talk a little bit more about your posts. So really what you're doing is you're a storyteller of your own life. And when I had spoke about, how are you going to create your memoir? This is it. So you really want to utilize your photos, your videos, your boomerangs, or even reels. Set up the scene, use people, use props, use good lighting, and then just go for it and be as authentic as you can. Next, you'll want to determine the captions and ensure that it fits with your voice. So things to consider, the number one would be your tone and then how you're going to word that. And using your tone is really what's going to say, hey, this is how this person speaks professionally. This is how this person speaks every day. So you really want it to mock who you actually are. Don't try to sound extra smart on something that you might not actually know much about. You really want to be an expert in what you already know. And then you can always add hashtags and emojis. Emojis are very professional for specific platforms, so Instagram and Facebook. And then tag any relevant accounts. But really, this is all about who are you, what do you represent, and what do you want? What do you want people to know, and what do you want to tell people? So before you post, always review everything that you do and make sure, this is just a little pro tip, that before you post, you have your set of hashtags ready, which we'll talk about in just another slide. But you really want to have those hashtags ready to comment in your first comment within 1 minute of posting, because that's how people are going to find you. The faster you do that, the better your chances are of going more on the For You page or the Explore page. So let's talk about the perfect post. Here you can see an example of one of the posts that I've done in the past where I've tagged the location, use a well-lit photo. Then, so the location's tagged over in the caption, but also it's tagged in the photo. And then I tagged relevant accounts that I want to see this. So because this is on my food blogger account, I'm tagging local magazines so that they can see those. And then also places like Visit Colorado, Visit Grand Junction, Visit Palisade. Those are more important. So I put them off to the side, just so that people that are looking to see what's happening there in the Palisades can say, oh, let's check Visit Palisades, and this photo would pop up. And then I utilize the first comment for all of my remaining hashtags that aren't important in those first couple hashtags. If you're going to use hashtags in your actual caption, my recommendation is to use up to 5 hashtags and no more than that. So you can see I've only used 4 or 3 in this post. And then that leaves me an additional set of hashtags for down below. Then let's talk about stories, or sorry, your aesthetic. So plan. Here's an example of a client I used to work with. And this was the picture on the left is the picture that they had before working with them. And then the picture on that bottom right is when we were working together. So you really want to start with a cohesive look. You want to pay attention of how you're posting, what it looks like when you're posting. So there's lots of apps out there such as Later, Planoly, and we can leave a list of those in the chat box for you guys. But those posting platforms will give you a look of what your posts will look like as you're posting them. So you can upload a bunch of photos and say, oh, I want my aesthetic to look a specific way. I want it to be like a food, a drink, food, drink, food, drink, or me, work information. We'll go into a few more in a second. But one of the things you can do is take multiple photos at a time and then use those every other couple posts, because that will also bring in that overall cohesive look that's more appealing to the eye. And one of the things you can do also is use Canva or InDesign for templates, for overlays, so that all of your photos have that same hue. If you're not super techy and using something such as like Photoshop or Lightroom. So here's just another example. These are both of the ladies that were on one of the first pages that I showed you. And you can see that these are more career driven. So the one on the left, she's, she's the realtor again, and she's showcasing different ways that represent her, what she's interested in, but also she hits on the real estate market throughout multiple posts. And then over there, you can see Coding Blonde again, Masha. She's giving tips that she's knowledgeable on. So she's showing her expertise. She's showing her that she's fun. She shows her workspace and how she works. And then she just gives some personality by using other tweets going out there. So hashtags. This is something I said we would talk on. Hashtags are pretty important when you're using them in a social post. So to identify good hashtags, you want to see what other people are using. What are the most popular hashtags? You don't have to use the number one, but you want to find out if you're on the right track. So how to find a hashtag? That's really simple. You can, on say Instagram, you can just look up hashtag Fort Collins, and then you can say at the top it will show you what other hashtags are trending in Fort Collins. And so that gives you an example of about 5 to 10 different hashtags right there. You don't have to use all of those, but it's a great start. You can also Google something such as real estate hashtags or whatever's very specific to your career, and just Google them and you'll get an idea of what's out there. I would cross-check with Instagram to make sure that they're popular on Instagram as well. And then one of the things I do is rotate hashtags for groups. So here's an example of different ones that you could create. So if you're in the PR agency, you could even take half of this list. If you don't want to use all 30 hashtags, you could take half of this list and say, today I'm going to use the first 5 and tomorrow I'm going to use the next 5. And then the third day I'll use the next 5. This is hypothetically if you were posting every day. If you're not posting every day, then I would have just 2 different sets of hashtags, but make sure that they are relevant to your post. If you post something such as zoo, like animals at the zoo, just because that's the trending thing, someone, it's all over the news stuff, and you're like, oh, I just want to be trending too, it's not going to do any good for your post. So make sure it's always relevant to what you're actually posting. And then number of hashtags, I know I mentioned 30 before. So Instagram, you can do 3 max per caption or 5, and then follow up with follow up with your first comment with up to 30. Unless you use 3, then you want to do 27. So you get a total of 30 per overall post. And then for Facebook, I would not recommend doing more than 3, just because people don't use hashtags as much through Facebook. So let's talk about stories. Instagram stories. So when I had talked about the highlight covers earlier of being knowledgeable of things, you can share things such as professional tips. So here's an example of Coding Blonde and what she used. And these are, this is just one of her highlight stories. She had, I think, like 7 different highlight covers. And then you can also show your interests. So this is back to Kate, the realtor. She's showing she likes cats and she likes puzzles. And then you can also do activities. So Kate's also showing that she likes to hike, and it gives you more of an idea of things she does outside of the office. And then motivation, alignment, things that really speak to you, quotes that speak to you. This is a great example just to show people that, you're not just out there, you're out there trying to make a difference by sharing great information. So this is something Jackie shared with her group. So when you're making a story, you want it to be the perfect story. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that. Let your story tell a story. Again, you're the storyteller of your own life, so you really want to nail down what you're doing. You can use stories for a sneak peek, share something exciting, behind the scenes content, something that's going to cause intrigue, and bring your audience to your most recent post. So when you do a post, you can usually follow up with, 1 to 3 stories, if not more. If you're on vacation, just go crazy with your stories. If it's just one thing of, say, you camping, you could just show one photo. So again, you're going to want to tag the location, tag any brands. So here you can see Campground of Americas is tagged on this photo of the little cabin. And then it's saying where that location is. And that's because when people are saying Jackson Hole, then they can see what other people are doing there and get some ideas and say, oh, I'm not in Jackson Hole, but I'm searching Jackson Hole just to get an idea of what activities there are. This sounds great. Let's go to Campgrounds of America. And then you really want to keep your font consistent per frame. So on the fajita page, or on the Cinco de Mayo post on the right side, you can see that I've tried to keep all of the font the same. I've changed up the colors just to kind of draw your eye to different locations that I wanted you to pay attention to. But then you can add emojis and GIFs whenever appropriate. Things you can do to switch up your story aesthetic is to use boomerangs, a photo, or a video. And if you do a video, always make sure that there's no sound unless it's necessary. So, sometimes someone might be talking in the background and that could reflect poorly on you of what that person might say. And it's not necessarily something you're saying or align with, but it just might be something that's caught in conversation as you're filming that. So really pay attention to what the sound is in the video. So let's talk about LinkedIn. We've talked about social platforms, but let's get more into the career aspect of social media. Dear hiring manager, my name is. So as you can see here, I'm viewing my profile as an anonymous person just to see what's available for other people to see. So my bio shows my name, all of my career specialties, a link to my website, which you can see over on the right-hand side. It gives a quick little background. Here's the company I work for. Here's where I went to college. Yeah, Grammys. And then make sure LinkedIn does a really good job when you're in your own profile view to make sure that your profile is complete. The importance of that is just so that it has everything from your work samples to just showing what your interests are. So let's go a little bit further into activities on LinkedIn. So one of the things you can do is go to linkedin.com/feed/follow. It will show you different people you can follow. It gives you an idea based on what you're already doing, but it also, someone can click on your page and see all of this activity of what you're doing. So it's really important to make sure that you're doing your best on LinkedIn. And that's things from on the right-hand side, you can see I'm commenting on this CEO's post about, his new news. And I'm saying, congratulations to you and the Bird Call team. One thing to consider is if you're job searching and you say I was to write on this person's post, like, oh, thanks for notifying us that this job opening is available. I'd love to work for company X because of X, Y, and Z. Well, then if I go and apply to company Y might see that I said that same thing to company X. So it's really important that if you are going to say, hey, I'm interested in this role, you want to make that more personalized of why, and don't use that when you go to write to the next company. But this is a really great way for a hiring manager to see what other jobs you're applying for, or if you're even active, if you're commenting on other people's posts. The other thing is you really want to pay attention to the different hashtags you're following on LinkedIn. So I'm following influencer marketing, social media, digital marketing. If someone was curious about what I'm interested in, they're going to know those are my career interests. So find things that align with what your career is about. And then check your network. Your network's going to show the people that you follow, as well as So these could be anybody from motivational speakers. I put the follow fresh perspectives photo down there just to give you an example of different people you could follow, as well as the businesses that align with you. So if you love volunteering or you're really passionate about the ocean, things like that, and you talk about that, say in your cover letter, those are things that you're going to want to add onto your social media as well, and say, hey, I follow Sustainable Ocean Alliance and I'm applying to this nonprofit because this is why I'm interested in it. And it kind of gives it a perspective of what you're doing outside of just your cover letter, just your resume. But also, even if you are in your career, it gives other people an idea. If you say there's a recruiter looking at your profile. And then moving on to the companies that you want to work for. This is really important. If you're trying to get a job at a certain place or you work at a place, you should definitely be following your company and commenting on their activities. So in conclusion, be like Dolly. She has her LinkedIn style, she has her Facebook style, her Instagram, and then just jokingly her Tinder style. If you feel that you align with certain things, make sure that you showcase that through your digital profile. And always, always, always go back and check on your digital analysis, because that can change at any time. So every time you're applying for a job or you want to make a speech or anything important, go ahead, Google yourself and figure out what's out there about you, because it can always be changing. Thank you so much. If you'd like a copy of this presentation, please reach out. Caitlin, back to you.
Awesome, Bre. Thank you so much. Super relevant, super practical information. I hope those of you who are with us today can take away something. I know I certainly did. So thank you again, Bre. A couple of questions that came in through the chat, if you have just a moment to address. Where do you find the web developer or contact information if you'd like to remove a photo from the internet? That came in from Candace Mathiasen, who happens to be one of our Women in Philanthropy Development Council members.
Awesome. Candace, yes. So at the bottom of every website, they normally will name their web developer down there, or use the contact us on their page if they don't have it. You can also see if they have a privacy policy on their page. So that's something as simple as, say, Bre Patterson. In the Google thing, I would write brepatterson.com, but space it out and say privacy policy. And it will say who to contact on that information, because not all privacy policies are active on the page. Like, they don't have their own link to it. It's usually hidden. So I highly recommend doing that.
Perfect, thank you. And then one more, Trish asks, should you slightly bury your hashtags, meaning you like hard return and then start your hashtags? This is a little bit above my head, so hopefully you understand what Trish is asking.
So you can bury them slightly with the 5 dots or dashes, or even in your caption if you want to go as far as that and skip the first comment. But it doesn't matter. Sometimes people look at those hashtags just to see your interests in a professional way, but in a social way, I would say it doesn't matter at all. So yeah.
Perfect, thank you.